Hello everybody and welcome to MWC Shorts, where we're bringing you content that you could have seen in Barcelona had MWC Barcelona been happening. As it is, we're lucky enough to have the great goodwill and enthusiasm of a large number of experts, and with me today is Jeff Hollingworth, the CMO of MobiledgeX, to talk with us a bit about Edge and the next evolution of that. But Jeff, I should probably hand over to you for a little bit to just give a brief introduction to the audience to what you do and where you're coming from.
Great to be here, Alex, and thanks for the introduction. My name is Jeff Hollingworth. I'm the CMO of MobiledgeX, and MobiledgeX is a company that was initially started by Deutsche Telekom about 2 years ago, but now is working with operators in every corner of the world, helping them realize and make it easy for 5G and edge computing solutions to be created and scaled.
Excellent. Well, in that case, you'd be the perfect person to comment on something that I think is can be a bit mysterious, and that's actually trying to define the edge, because depending on who you talk to, you'll hear some very different definitions. So, I mean, how do you conceive of that?
Well, a couple of comments on that, and I completely agree from the point of view of the confusion. I think one of the problems tends to be that people describe the edge more from their point of view out, rather than from the point of view, who is the edge for and why do they care? And the second part is that I think we should recognize that edge isn't something new. Just in the same way as actually the iPhone and Apple didn't create the smartphone, they just did it better than the earlier versions of that phone. So there are many different edges, and the most appropriate edge is dependent on really where you are and what you're trying to do at this time. And I think the part that's making the industry excited about edge computing now is more the case of making all of these different edge locations work together in a very easy and harmonious way, both to maximize the return on each edge location, but also to create a performance that isn't possible without having compute and other resources closer to where the consumption point is.
Okay, thanks. There's actually something that you spoke about there I'd like to pick up on, if that's okay. And that's to do with the idea of those different locations. There are a number of cases where, for example, telcos have been selling off tower infrastructure assets, or they're looking at network sharing, or potentially you've got enterprises or urban areas that are looking to develop their own assets as well. So in terms of that interworking, is that at the moment viable between these different networks?
Yeah, I think an important observation that you're making is that edge computing actually isn't a physical problem. Edge computing is more a business orchestration and then operational problem. In the very same way that Amazon Web Services didn't own all of their assets when they started off from a public cloud point of view, they actually worked with other people in a collaborative way, like Equinix at the interconnect points, to actually make sure they were in the right places at the right time for their business. I think what we're seeing now is that because edge really is an increased distribution, then there's a natural opportunity for telecom operators to be in the right location and faster and have relationships, even if they don't own those locations, than other people that have run a model that has been less distributed so far. Now, just coming back to the definition of edge, one thing that might be valuable to point out, we've tried to simplify it down to talking always about 4 different types of edge. And each of them is valuable at different times for different reasons. So it's almost like baking a cake, this, when I go through the 4 ingredients. There'll always be a device edge, and that can range from something that's very limited in capability, like an IoT sensor. It can go up slightly with, say, a video camera, but still all the video camera is doing is streaming out RTSP streams. Or you can go all the way up to the most advanced smartphones, and the most advanced smartphones have more capability in them than most people's desktops a few years ago. So that's the first edge. So the first thing is, what do you want to do on the device edge? The next one in that sometimes exists, but not always, is then the enterprise on-premise edge. This is the local data center that's dedicated to local operation that gives very near computing and different performance than something that's not on-prem. Then you have the telecom edge, and before our the purpose of the telecom edge has purely been to provide connectivity between the on-premise or device edge and then what is more familiar, at least to the developer community, which is the public edge, the public cloud edge, the internet edge, whatever you want to talk about that. But each one of those 4 edges is quite a good way to model the world according to those 4 edges, because all you end up doing is having different flavors inside those locations. And each one has a different governance, a different ownership structure, a different advantage and disadvantage.
Okay. In that case, you've got a really diverse edge environment, and something where it seems like pretty much anybody is hunting for the killer app or the use case there. I mean, I'm sure you work with a lot of these already. So, I mean, how do you identify when people are coming to you with things that really are sort of appropriate or ready for that kind of treatment, or are there particular early adopters that have an identifiable type?
So let me answer that in 2 ways. One is from a business point of view, and the second one is just from kind of spotting technical opportunities that will benefit from edge. So from the business point of view, then all businesses increasingly are having to combine digital information that gives them contextual awareness with physical infrastructure. And either you're an online merchant moving further out, or you're a physical legacy or retail or manufacturing person that needs to augment what they already know. That generates the need for understanding what's going on in the real time. That involves processing a lot of data. That involves understanding what that data means. So you can adjust both what's happening in the local environment, be that a shop, and changing what turns up on a menu based on what's cooking in the kitchen, or being a manufacturing plant that actually understands supply and demand and what needs to actually go out or stay in. So we actually see a lot of very large businesses that really need to complete their digital transformation journey to the next level. And what it's really enabling them to do is move from a supply chain way of thinking to a demand chain way of thinking. And if you think about the internet, that's what the internet has allowed us to do. I used to have to buy a newspaper in advance to read what was in it. And now, if I want to understand anything in the news, I can just ask for it and it's delivered to me. Well, that transformation is starting to happen to absolutely every business that wants to actually be competitive and survive. So from a business point of view, there's a massive amount of energy in understanding what they should do next to take their business from an experience point of view to their customers to the next level, and also their efficiency to the next level. From a technical point of view, a few things that are really easy to spot that, that would indicate a solution needs the edge. One is if someone walks up to you with a server under their arm and they say, yeah, to kind of make this work, I need to install this server close to where it needs to work. That's a great example of how that server needs to disappear and actually be a service delivered from something that is as close or as nearly as close. And that's where telecom edge becomes very powerful. Telecom edge is really, one way to describe it is like pseudo on-premise edge. So suddenly you don't have to have your own operations in all of these facilities, retail shops, manufacturing. You can have it just next door because telecom is just next door. And the moment you can do that, then it means all these other businesses that maybe couldn't afford those on-premise dedicated solutions can also do it as well. So it's like the democratization of all of that. So number one is, if you see a man or a woman with a server saying, to make this work, you need to put this somewhere, good edge candidate. The next one is if someone turns around to you and says, I've got all of this information, but I can't process it, it's too much. I can't thin it, I can't find signals in there. Great candidate for edge. Because obviously, and we see this in lots of places, people have information, but they can't actually handle it in a continuous basis. A way to identify that, when companies do market research for a week to see what customers are doing, and then they extrapolate that market research to do a strategic plan for a year to try and increase output. Market research needs to be replaced not with not having to ask people, you already know because the information is telling you. And then the third example is anywhere where there's lots of collaborating endpoints, different sensors, different information, where the actual understanding of what's going on is coming from all of those places. Now, for example, like large facilities that have many video cameras that need to understand how people are moving across the cameras or how machines are moving across the cameras. That all has to be, each feed has to be compared with the other feed to get, to make sure that there's only one Alex that has been identified rather than thinking there's 20 Alexes and they're all different people.
Right, okay. That's fascinating. That throws up a lot of different questions, I think. I mean, one of which is just from what you were saying, it feels as though ultimately one of the biggest beneficiaries of this could be those sort of very small businesses that very often struggle to get the attention of sort of traditional telco sales machine or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. In the same way that the smartphone allowed us as individual people to, we ended up and we still do, we have better experiences on our smartphones than most people do when they go into a corporate environment with a large staff running large, IT solutions. And what we've seen there is obviously then people started to use different solutions, just like we're doing now. We're using a Zoom thing for video conferencing that performs better than most dedicated conferencing solutions I find that are supported by companies. I think we're going to see the next journey of those types of applications and solutions. The opportunity for telecom is all of those will require pseudo on-premise type infrastructure to process the amount of information required in the time where it's still valuable. So almost the slogan is for telecom is imagine business models around pseudo on-prem solutions.
Brilliant. And in your view then, is that, do you see sort of edge maturing as a technology to serve that kind of business model, or is it more a question of there's already that capability and the next evolutions are just to make it more efficient and so on?
Well, so what we are starting to see and have actually started to develop our edge cloud product around is the fact that the large enterprises all start to appear exactly like service providers, but their service providers are to their customers, just in the way that telecom are service providers to their customers. So we actually have expanded our product now to support on-premise solutions for those kinds of people, the largest retailers, largest manufacturing, to allow them to be a service provider, just like a telecom operator is a service provider. They're no different to us from a product point of view. But what the opportunity opens up is that at the moment, for those enterprises to be a service provider, they have to have on-premise infrastructure because the telecom edge has not been rolled out everywhere yet. But it's designed in a way where the telecom operators can choose to put pseudo on-prem infrastructure in the right places, which means that those enterprises don't have to have a supply chain and be in the infrastructure operational space at all. And the side effect of that then is the moment that a large enterprise can do it, the telecom can, and the solution vendors can also offer those solutions to smaller enterprises as well.
Fantastic. That makes a lot of sense. I'm aware that we're sort of hitting the top of our time for this, but that's been fascinating, and I do appreciate your time to talk about this. I look forward to doing this again, perhaps in 2021.
Absolutely. Now, just as a closing comment, just coming back to your first observation that the conversation is very complicated. We completely agree with you. And we're actually starting an initiative called Seamster.io. Everything I've said in our conversation is me just speaking about what we have in this initiative that's open to anybody. But our goal is to have one consistent view and conversation where everything I've said can be challenged, absolutely. But it's challenged speaking the same language to each other in the same world versus, having 5 different definitions of edge. And maybe people agree, but they're not agreeing at all. There's no common vocabulary there. So anybody that's interested in carrying on, then please reach out to me, or even better, just visit Seamster.io and request to join.
Fantastic. That sounds great. I should think I'll be doing that. Seamster.io. So excellent. Thanks very much for that.